tryout season is upon us, and tryouts are super emotional for athletes, for parents, and for us as coaches. So if you have ever dreaded tryouts like I have, and honestly still do, this episode is for you. I'm going to be breaking down tryout best practices and the things that have worked for me over the past 14 years of being a head coach. Kind of nailed it down to a couple of things that really help the tryout process go a lot smoother and less stressful for everyone involved. So let's get into it. Part one, let's reduce the anxiety ahead of time for athletes and parents. And how do we do this? One of the biggest mistakes as coaches is that we assume athletes know and parents know what we are looking for in tryouts. And so to reduce some of that anxiety, because ultimately you want your players to play their best. And if they are having too much anxiety and there's a lot of nerves happening, they're probably not going to play their best. So start communicating your expectations early, including what you are evaluating. So right now, currently, I'm in my summer season. So we've got tryouts in like 4 weeks. And I'm talking to all the players who are showing up to the summer training about what I'm going to be looking for and what coaches are looking for when it comes to tryouts, so that they know and it's crystal clear what that's all going to be. And I'm going to go into detail in step 2 on what things I look for as a coach and what I'm communicating. But what we know is that the more that they can understand what the whole process is going to be like, the better it's going to be for them coming in. And that can even mean the structure. Like, it's 2 days of tryouts, it's 4 hours each day. We're going to be evaluating all of the skills. It's normal to be nervous about this. Nerves mean that you care. And so all of those things are really important to communicate ahead of time. Now, the other thing that I'm doing with my athletes right now in the summer is slowly incorporating some mental training skills so that they're prepared for tryouts. Because like I said, they're super stressed, and most athletes don't have very good ways to handle stress and play well. They don't really know how to come back fast from mistakes, even though you probably say as a coach, I'm not looking at the mistake, I'm looking at how you respond. And they're like, yeah, I don't really know how to respond without like spiraling and getting in my own head. So I slowly start to incorporate some of these mental training skills even over the summer. We do our full-blown mental training program in season. It literally takes like 20 minutes a week, but I start to drop some of these skills, including the snapback routine, so that they have some things that they can rely on when they head into tryouts. Now, obviously, you won't see all of your players in the summer before they try out. You'll get there on day 1 of tryouts, and you'll have girls show up that you've never even heard of before, and that's fine too. But giving my kids mental training skills, like even simple things like the snapback routine on how to get over a mistake fast with a breath, a reset word, a reset signal, is really valuable for them to be able to kind of like calm, settle in, so I can see how they're playing. It's the worst thing as a coach too, to like, you've got 2 days of tryouts or maybe even less than that, and you're not seeing the best performance out of athletes. And now you make decisions based on that. And now, like, a few weeks into the season, you're like, dang, I didn't see that at tryouts. If I would have seen that, I would have put her on a higher team or whatever. Okay. And so that's why giving your players these skills helps them in tryouts, but obviously helps them in the season as well. So if you want to learn simple ways that you can do that, including the snapback routine, head to our free training for coaches. It's called coachfreetraining.com. I break down the simple mental training tools that I incorporate in the summer and also into my season. And then talk about the Plug and Play Elite Mental Game for Teams, which is our plug and play program for high school coaches to easily implement mental training without having to spend a ton of time, without having to be a sports psychologist. Like, we make it super easy for you. So coachfreetraining.com is where you can handle that. So coachfreetraining.com is where you can register for that. All right, so that's part 1. Like, try and communicate early to reduce some of the anxiety for athletes and parents right out the gate. Okay. Another one kind of similar to that is to avoid surprises. We don't like to be surprised when it comes to this. So most of the drama that comes with tryouts come from unmet expectations. Yes, there's going to be, if you're in a program where you have to make cuts, there's going to be disappointments and all that. And athletes and parents can handle disappointments. It's the surprises that kind of like catch them off guard. So unmet expectations usually come from poor communication. So some things that you really need to know as a coach before tryouts, like heading into it, especially if you're a new coach or maybe you have a new AD like I do this season, knowing things like how many players can you take on a team. So for volleyball, I am choosing 3 teams with my coaches, and each team has 12 players, but can I carry 13? Can I carry 14? Is there a strict rule? Like, what is that impact? Know ahead of time going into it. And you can share that with athletes too, so that they know, okay, hey, there's 60 girls that are here, but she can only take 12 per team. That's 36. And you got to know, you don't want to be heading in being like, can I take 12 or can I take 16 or am I capped at whatever? Okay. Are returning varsity players guaranteed a spot? Like if they made varsity last year, do they make varsity this year? What's that about? Okay. Do seniors have to be on varsity? Can they make another team? Are there cuts? How are cuts being handled? Who is making the decisions? Like all of those questions seem very simple, but as a coach, you've got to know going into tryouts, like, what is my situation? And can I communicate this early so that there's not surprises? Everybody knows, like, this is what it is. I often communicate in the summer as well. Like I have 12 spots for varsity. I have 7 returning players. It means that there's 5 vacant spots. What I'm looking for in those 5 spots are an outside hitter, a middle, and 2 DSs or something like that. I think I'm missing one, and maybe a setter. Like letting them know ahead of time, like, here's what I'm looking for. That just helps a lot so that they can get their arms around that idea of like, oh, well, if I am a middle, she's not looking for a middle, they can kind of like see the writing on the wall, or they know like, oh, wow, she's looking for 2 DSs and there's like, 12 who are going to be trying out. Like you can kind of help them and not be a huge like surprise when it comes to tryouts. So communicating that early is also really important. All right, this next part, probably the most important. What's your evaluation criteria and what are you looking for in your positions and in the people that are going to be on your team? Don't go by feel, although that's part of it, like your judgment and what you see and what you trust as like the best makeup of the team obviously weighs a lot, but you also got to go by standards. If you're on a team like, or in a school like I am, where we do have to justify the reasons for the people who make the team and don't make the team, you need to have like some sort of criteria. So I like to think of it like job descriptions. And so for varsity players on my team, I have it all listed out. Like for a setter, I'm looking for you to be able to locate the ball, deliver a hittable set, communicate with your hitters. Okay, those are like the 3 big things that I'm looking for. For outsides, I need you to be able to score. So you have to be able to hit and earn points, pass well and serve receive, and hit out of system. Okay. I have the same thing for middle blockers, for liberos, DSs. Like you don't need a 10-page rubric, but you do need to have standards. I'm like, this is what I'm looking for. I stat some things. I know it can get overwhelming. That's where it's helpful to have extra hands at tryouts, so that like I sometimes have returning players or like volunteers come in to run, like facilitate the drills so that I'm not having to facilitate and evaluate at the same time. So that really helps so that you can like stat if you need to, but having criteria and then ranking based on that criteria is really important, that you have some reasons for your choices. And it's okay to share with parents. Like, yes, we use role-based criteria, but we also use coaching judgment to make final decisions. And no, it's not a perfect science, but it's fair and it's very transparent. Right? So what is your evaluation system? What are you looking for? Like 2 or 3 things in each of like the positions that you're choosing on, like what are those things, and communicate those. All right, the intangibles. Yes, there is skill, but then obviously as coaches, we're looking at intangibles as well. And that's what separates 2 players. Like you, especially if you're making decisions between players of equal skill, like you're going to be looking at things like their ability to bounce back fast after mistakes, their ability to be a good teammate, how they're communicating, their leadership, like all of those things are really important. So I'm looking as a coach, like how do they respond to mistakes? How do they respond to coaching from me? How do they communicate? How do they handle pressure? Do they compete or do they crumble? And I start to train some of these skills, because the good and the bad of it is that, yeah, I'm looking for those things, but I also realize as a coach that these are things that can be trained, and some of these athletes haven't learned these skills yet. So it's my job as a coach to also train some of these skills, like how to get over mistakes, how to be resilient, how to deal with pressure. So while I am evaluating some of these things, I'm also realizing that like, hey, I have a system to train these things in my season. And so if it's not going to be like, if I have a really great player, a hitter who is like just crushing it and she's going to help our team physically, but she struggles under pressure a little bit, I know that as a coach, like I'm going to take her because I have a way to train that in season. We intentionally train the mental side of the game, and about 20 minutes a week we dedicate to like part of practice time on Mondays to train those skills, and I know that it works. So I'm going to take a player who is, really physically good, knowing that like I'm going to be able to train her mental game as well. So I've talked about it before, but if you head to coachfreetraining.com, that is our free training for coaches where I break down exactly how I do it. And I do it in a way where it's not spending a lot of your practice time. It's not requiring a whole lot of prep from you as a coach. You literally plug and play the videos, lead a short discussion. It's taken average players from like average ability to like just want like that one next level up where they're able to compete, they're able to perform, not fall apart under pressure. We've leaned on these skills. We've won 4 state championships consecutively, and especially this past one, it was like, oh wow, like that really made a difference, that what we were training weekly in our gym showed up in the state championship match when they were down and had to fight back, and we were super resilient in the face of seemingly really tough odds to come back. So anyways, if you want to learn how to do that in your program, coachbretraining.com is where you go. But yes, you are also evaluating some of those intangibles so that you can, build a team that is coachable, that are full of good teammates, who are communicators, who are leaders, but also knowing that like, hey, I've got a way to train the mental side of the game. So I know that I can take a player who's physically really, really good, and I'm going to make them even better because of the mental training that I'm doing in my gym. Okay. Now, how to communicate teams and cuts. This can be a doozy, right? So first of all, this is the hardest part. Okay. First of all, set a timeline. Let athletes know, let parents know when cuts are going to be communicated. We do our tryouts over the course of 2 days. So sometimes we do cut depending on how many we have on the first day, so that we can kind of thin the herd for the second day and really take a closer look at people. And that's only if we have like a lot of players and it's just very obvious, just because we have limited spots. Okay. But set a timeline. Here's how I've done it. This may or may not work for you, because I don't like posting lists. I don't like emailing things out, because I like to be able to give, if athletes have the courage to come out and try out, they deserve to, be talked to face-to-face and given some feedback. Not all athletes would actually choose that, though. They're like, just send an email so I don't have to deal with it. But I think that's also part of us developing a skill in athletes to be able to handle feedback and have tough conversations or hear tough feedback. So I think it's okay. Although athletes might not always want it, it's like ultimately we owe it to them to give them a little bit of feedback as well. So what I do on the last day, I have athletes that are, they're playing in the gym, and we've got our teams finally made. Like my coaches and I have deliberated, and we've got our teams. I call players in, like out into the hallway one at a time. I have them bring their bags with them so that it's not this awkwardness of like going back into the gym, grabbing their bags and leaving if they got cut. And I give them the information, that I give them the choice. If they got cut, I can say, I say, you can, you can go back in and play, like some do, because they're like, I just want to play. Or you can go, and call your parents and be picked up. So, but in that conversation, if you are cutting somebody, I, first of all, like thank them and give them props for showing up. I talk about why. I say like, unfortunately, we don't have a spot for you on the roster. I'm like one reason why and what they can work on. And then I also give them a little piece of paper that they hopefully will share with their parents. It has some of those notes on it, but it also has like the list of other sports that they can still either try out for, or that are no cut sports that they can participate in. So they're leaving with something that they can also may or may not share with their parents, but they can if they want. And so that they have the information moving forward on what they can do. So it's never easy. I do find that this works all right with, calling people in. It does, players are going to talk. They're like, oh, did you see who went out? Or did they come back? And, they're starting to piece things together. But then at the end, I call the teams, and then they meet with their coach for a second. So that's what I found works for me. I don't like announcing teams and then having this big group of people who are just like, oh, my name didn't call, I guess I'm cut. My name wasn't called, so I guess I'm cut. But it's up to you how it works best with your program. I will say, like, give them the opportunity to hear from you and hear from you face to face if they didn't make a team. So obviously you're going to have people who are happy, people who are sad, people who are disappointed, and all of the other things. Make yourself available as a coach to chat through some of those things. Understand that you might get parent emails, and try and see it through the lens of they just really want the best for their kid, and they're also heartbroken for their kid as well. That's also why you have evaluations and you have data to back up some of the decisions that you make. But we don't want to just ghost people or, just post a list and have it that way. Okay. I say all that to say, if you do it differently in your gym and it works, I would love to hear about it. So comment below if you're watching this on YouTube, like, what do you do that's working for you? What are your best practices for tryouts? What has worked over the past, 14 years? I have found that tryouts become easier when you clearly communicate everything we talked about. Clearly communicate, you have an evaluation system, and you have a way to make cuts and make decisions in a way that preserves player dignity as well. Okay, As I mentioned, if you want to know more about how I train mental skills throughout the summer, also in this season, so that after you make those teams, you are also supporting them on those intangibles, like coming back from mistakes. And I say they're intangibles, but they are pretty tangible because you can see it when your team doesn't have those skills. And I've been in that situation as a coach more times than I can count, where we lost games that we were like up and we blew the lead. And it wasn't because it was a lack of talent or skill. It was because it was happening between our ears. So if you want skills on how to train this with your team in a really simple way, go to coachbretraining.com. All right, I'm Coach Bre. This is the Coach Your Game podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.